Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. If I could get your attention, please. If I could get your attention, please. So, I'm going to turn on a light here. If you're up by the fireplace, close your eyes. Move out of the way because that's going to get hit with a lot of light right now. At least that's the idea. There we go. My name is Adam Kilbourn. Dave Kilbourn was my dad. I was the middle child here. My little one here, Zev, is grabbing hold. So if you're able to hear me on Zoom or on YouTube, and I say able because we're having some technical difficulty. I think everyone's cell phones in here, just the sheer number of people is overwhelming our internet here. So is what it is. If I can make a couple of management requests here. First is, you, my friend, you are a fabulous looking human being. You standing right there, yeah, but you're right in the way of my camera, and I got a close-up right now on my beautiful face. We don't want to miss that. I mean, come on, yeah. So at the back of the room there's a camera. I am trying to capture all this stuff, and technical difficulties aside, hopefully it works out well. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's shown up here tonight. Dave Kilbourn meant something to you, and the fact that you're here means the world to us, and I know it means the world to him too. So, thank you for being here. I want to thank the caterers. They did an amazing job with this stuff. I super appreciate all the effort they put into it. The bartenders here, make sure you tip them. It's they're here working for you. So, and the curling club. I called the curling club up and said, "Hey, so my dad passed, and we're looking for a venue." My mom said, "Hey, why don't we come and have the venue at the curling club?" So I called them up, and I said, "We'd like to do this." And they said, "Okay, let me call you back." And Leland calls me back, and he goes, "Okay, you're good." I go, "What do you mean I'm good?" "So your dad used to be a member here." I'm like, that was like 40 years ago. How long do these memberships last? But they last a long time because this is Fairbanks, Alaska, and relationships run deep. And so a big shout out to Leland and the rest of the curling club staff. This is an amazing space, and I just so am thankful that we got to call it ours for tonight. So thank you. It's perfect. Yeah. As is the tradition with this type of stuff, usually we have someone from the religious community come and chat with us. And my dad attended First Methodist Church here in town. That's the one I went to when I was growing up. That was the church they went. And we have Pastor Bob Jones here tonight. Did I get it right? Bob Jones? Yes. I don't have my notebook with me, so I'm excited about the fact I remember that. Bob Jones is going to come and say some stuff, and then we'll have a few words from the family, and then we're going to watch a video of a bunch of well wishes from friends and family, and also hear some words from David and hear a little bit of his life story and stuff. So hopefully enjoy that. And at the end, we're going to hang out. I encourage you to stay and hang out, and the reason is this: is everyone in this room creates something tonight. Your presence here, your stories, your love, and your laughter create something. And it's kind of magical. And I see all these beautiful smiling faces around, and it's like, let's have a magical night, Let's do it in honor of Dave and just enjoy ourselves. So if you want to tell a story, last bit, tell a story. There's a video camera in the back that will be rolling all night. I'm going to turn it off just so we can do this presentation. But when it's done, go over there, sit down, grab the mic, and tell a quick story about Dave Kilbourn. We want to grab as many stories as we can. All right? Without further ado, Pastor Bob Jones. Thank you.
Adam, thank you so much. At moments like this, we are reminded that we are all God's children, and we come together to celebrate a life lived out. A life lived out in fullness. And how many of you read the obituary? All right, what's the opening phrase there? Finish like a pro. But you know, at the same time, we have to acknowledge the fact that we come together, we're grieving, we're hurting. It happens so quickly, so unexpected. We have to acknowledge the loss and pain that we feel. But in the midst of it, may we find the grace that in pain we find comfort, in sorrow we find hope, and even when there's death, we're reminded of the promise of life eternal. When Aldine came to me, usually when I'm doing a service like this, I ask everyone to cite together the 23rd Psalm. But as I was talking to Aldine, other verses came to mind that are more fitting, I think, and you might recognize them. They were probably used if you were married in a church. They were probably used at your wedding. Paul writes, "If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers to understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have such faith as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, so that I may boast, I've gained nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And three of the most powerful words that Paul writes: love never ends." Let us pray. We praise you, O Lord, for all those who've gone before and finished their course in faith, and now they rest from their labor. And as we gather today, we especially praise you for David. To all of those that have gone before, and now to David, grant your peace, let your perpetual light shine upon them, and help us so to believe where we have not yet seen, that your presence will lead us faithfully through our years, to be together at last with them in your home, not made with hands, but is eternal in the heavens. Amen. Aldine, did you want to? Adam? Okay.
Thank you, Pastor. It's one of those moments that you wish you had an MC, and if you have the back office support and everything else. Peter, where you at, Pete? Pete wanted to say a few words here. This is the youngest, Peter Kilbourn.
Thank you. So, my sense, everyone here knew my dad from a different perspective. It might have been work, it might have been a hockey game, it might have been any number of things. And the fact that everyone's here, I think, speak volumes about him, is that I personally thought the world of him. But, so I thought I'd try to share a little bit about the youngest son's perspective. And, you know, he was big on sayings, and the one that he used over and over with me was do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. And I don't know how many of you have heard that before, but my dad was a horrible procrastinator. And that was the phrase he used to keep himself honest. And he wrote it on his desk calendar every single month for as long as I knew him. You know, it was every month. It was down there at the bottom. And so what he'd do is he'd get up every single morning and he'd take care of all the stuff he didn't want to do that day. Bills, this. And so that way, by 6 o'clock in the morning, he could go do what, he wanted to do, or, get his out of the way. And I think that to me is that's something that I'll try to take that lesson with me for the rest of my life, because he was an adventurer at heart, and he wanted to go have adventures. And that was the way he figured out that he could go have his adventures if he got his work done first. And I think that there's something to be said for living your life that way. And so the only other note I really wanted to make here tonight is that my dad might have been a little gruff to some folks or been a little bit of a curmudgeon at times, but he was one of the most generous of spirit men I've ever met. Is that my entire childhood, there was a stray teenager in our house. Is that over and over again, they were hockey players from UAF. They were somebody Adam knew from school. And these were kids that oftentimes had difficult home lives. And it was, hey, give them a bed, give them some food, make sure they're taken care of, make sure they're going to class. And it was over and over and over again, you know, and it was, he took immense pride in how those young men grew and developed as adults, and that was something that I thought that everyone in here should know about Dave Kilbourn is just how great a guy he was. But so with that, I'll pass it over to, I think, my mom is going to be next.
Well, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming. It's humbling to realize the great number of friends that we have. Just amazing. So thank you for not only coming, but for all of you that have sent condolences and offers to help. And it's going to be difficult going forward because, as most of you know me, I'm pretty busy. And now I have all of his things, including every morning at the car wash. And some of these people who he's been talking to over the last, I mean, we have lots of regulars there, and it's his coffee shop, right? And he'd have conversations with them, and they'd ask me about him, and they couldn't believe that he wasn't around, and that I was filling in. I think you all have the obituary, or you saw it in the paper. I think the one thing that people don't know about David is he was very shy. And 52 years of me pushing him, he would go to things and he would talk to people, but it wasn't his style. He didn't talk very much if he didn't have to, or if he didn't know you well. He could always tell stories, but that was because he knew you. Otherwise, I saw someone standing kind of in the corner, just standing there because they didn't recognize somebody they could go talk to tonight. And that would be David, because if he went into a group and he didn't know people there, he wouldn't go up and start talking to them. Whereas I'd just go up and introduce myself and we'd have a conversation. His cousin Judy always said her husband could talk to a stump, and my husband said, that's a pretty good description of Aldine too. So in any event, it's a sad time, and yet life goes on, so we got to make it work. So thank you.
All right. So we're going to try a video here, but I need to swap some stuff out. So give me just about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, something like that. And what we're going to do here is show a little video that we created for David.
The first time I met David is when they brought him home from the hospital. He was my best friend.
So I've got this father-in-law named David. He lives in Fairbanks, Alaska. Yeah, he flies a plane, lands on the water. Actually flies it sometimes to his cabin and packs it. I think that's actually the last cabin on Earth. He hunts for moose, catches moose, brings it back, feeds his family for a year.
Had some very special times and our hunting trips on the paw. I'm glad I got to know him for the last 50 years or so.
I first met Dave back in the 1990s when I was out farming in the Mott, North Dakota area, and he was looking for a place to hunt, and I had good pheasant hunting.
The weather, well, sometimes it's 60 below. And successful career, great family and friends.
But we weren't really political allies, but when I dumped the Republican Party and went to Libertarian, I had my office, I set up running for governor, and Dave walked in and said, I want to help. And that's the way we really got acquainted.
I first met Dave in 1966 when we pledged a fraternity, and most of us pledges were from Washington and had no idea where Alaska was, and so we teased Dave mercilessly about being such a hick. Ironic because I moved up here 9 years later myself.
I knew David from high school, but when he came back during his freshman year to speak to our English class about the importance of college, going outside to go to school to have a different experience, and that memory stayed with me all these years until today even.
As David said, you can't be too good looking
Have too much gas.
or too much ammunition.
We'll miss you, David.
God bless.
I get the same reaction from all my friends. How do we meet this David? Well, I've had a chance to meet you. And I gotta say, well done, David. Well done.
The Lone Ranger.
David Charles Kilbourn was born in Idaho to Robert Leroy and Jean Beth Ross Kilbourn on May 31st, 1948. He and his older brother Randy and younger brother Jim, or Bo as everyone called him, grew up on their parents' cattle ranch near Gooding, Idaho. It was a frontier childhood, one in which you learn the finer things in life like hunting gophers, cattle drives, milking cows, and how to drive a stick shift from his double-leg amputee grandfather, Ben Kilbourn. Well, at age 10, David's life was turned upside down when his father, Robert, was killed in an automobile accident. Cattle ranches don't give you much room to breathe, and the next day his mother, Jean, was up at the crack of dawn, transformed from a housewife into a cattle rancher herself. David always had tremendous respect for his mother's backbone and grit. She taught him how to be resilient in the face of overwhelming odds. 2 years later, David's mother married his dad's best friend, James Schmidt, who had a young son, Sam, and a daughter named Minta May. James had a job at Tip Top Chevrolet in Fairbanks, Alaska, and the newlyweds loaded up their 5 children, ages 9 to 13, into their Nash Rambler. They drove the 2,800-mile journey to Alaska via the Alcan Highway, arriving in Fairbanks in March 1960 to 30 below weather. David graduated from Lathrop High School in 1966 and began attending the University of Washington the fall after he graduated. In his senior year, David was president of his college fraternity, and at one of their parties, he met Aldine Lewis, who was a UW freshman from Olympia, Washington. Aldine remembered that David was a tall, handsome man, wearing a huge cowboy hat and blue jeans when they met. David recalled that Aldine talked a lot. The two briefly dated, but when David graduated from UW in 1970 with a degree in finance and accounting, he went back to Fairbanks to work for Paul Gavora in the grocery business. During the longshoreman strike of 1971, David was tasked with finding out where the company's shipping containers were on the docks in Seattle. And while in Seattle, he discovered his fraternity was throwing another party, and David stopped by to visit friends. Aldine was there too. The two spent the evening talking, and then the next night, and the next. And less than a week later, he asked Aldine to marry him. That's how David was. When he made up his mind, he was all in. They were married in Olympia, Washington on June 24th, 1972, and honeymooned in Mexico. While there, David got to experience the famed Montezuma's Revenge and the mother of all sunburns. It was so bad that they canceled the rest of their Mexico trip and took the remaining time to fly to Las Vegas, where they finished out their honeymoon in the newly opened Caesar's Palace. The happy couple settled into their new lives in Fairbanks and soon started having kids. They had 3 sons together: Ben, born in 1975, Adam in 1978, and Peter in 1986. Family was a priority for David, and he was a great dad. He was always taking his boys out to experience life together. Hunting, fishing, camping, hockey, road trips. He made it a priority to spend time with his boys. Whether he picked it or it picked him, David's career of nearly 50 years was in the grocery and shipping business. In high school, he started working for Fairbanks grocer Paul Gavora and worked for him for more than 20 years. In the late 1980s, David founded Yes Foods, Yukon Express Services, and built it into one of Alaska's largest food service companies. He sold the business to Carr Godstein in 1994 and semi-retired. But by 2002, he was restless again and went to work for Totem Ocean Trailer Express. He started as the Fairbanks manager and worked his way up to vice president of pricing and marketing by the time he retired for good in 2013. Along the way, he decided he needed a hobby and bought the Bentley Car Wash. For the past 30 summers, he and Aldine have religiously cleaned muddy bays, fixed broken sprayer heads, and unstuck gummed-up quarter machines, helping Fairbanks stay clean. As much work as the car wash has been, David always enjoyed his mornings, talking to friendly travelers from all over the world as they made a pit stop at his car wash. An avid bush pilot since 1975, David's flown all over Alaska and the lower 48 in his Cessna 185. He had a quiet confidence about him that made you know he had everything handled. He had a saying he loved to share: there's old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. In all the years we flew with him, we always knew he would get us to where we were going safely. Being a pilot opened up Alaska to his friends and family. He took us places few other people have ever seen, hunting and fishing in some of the most beautiful wilderness imaginable. Moose camp, duck camp, fishing camp. For close to 50 years, David got to experience the parts of Alaska that outdoorsmen dream of, and he knew it. He cherished his time in the woods, and it was what he loved most about Alaska. In 2022, David and Aldine celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary at their property on the Manilik. Most would look at the ramshackle wood cabin with a matching outhouse, located in the middle of nowhere, accessible only by float plane or boat and shutter. But for David and Aldine, it was the perfect location to celebrate a half-century together. The two were true partners in life. They had their disagreements over the years. David could be a real grump from time to time, and Aldine still talked too much, but they were great together. They made each other better and were each other's biggest fans. Last Christmas, David's and Aldine's 3 sons, their spouses, and grandchildren were blessed to spend a wonderful family Christmas together in Fairbanks for the first time. It was a special trip, and we all talked about the future and how we would plan to do it more often. No, David won't be there next time, and he will be missed. But the life he lived and the lessons he taught, well, they will be. Flap. Finish like a pro. We will, David. We will.
Rachel, what is this?
I'm asking permission for us to stay.
What is that you have there?
It's a satellite phone.
Where the hell did you get that?
I bought it.
It works?
It works. We'll see if it works. We'll see if I get my lovely wife. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello. So ideally we would fly these. I can fly a moose and a half for the ones we got, and ideally I would fly it on Tuesday to give it a chance to hang and bring it on Tuesday. That's what we're going to try to do, weather permitting. And we have not turned out the hunting lamp. So if we see another moose, we're going to shoot it. So we had a vote, and the democracy rules in this case because I agreed with it. All right.
Where did you get this phone?
I might have picked up and done something. I bought it so I can call my wife and say I love you, and then I can screw around and do what I want to do and not get in trouble too much.
This is a message to my friend David. Yes, David, my hair is still colored like a peacock.
One of the only men that's ever truly reminded me of my dad. Things that he valued, the great outdoors, hunting, fishing, flying, time with family, being a good dad.
I was about 16 or 17 years old when Dave and Aldine were generous enough to welcome me into their home.
I was with both of you, Aldine and David, for a couple of months in Alaska in 1983. I had a great time with you. I felt like one of the family.
One of my greatest memories of that time was it seemed like he got up each and every morning and made breakfast for his boys before they had to set off to school. And I just remember thinking that was the coolest thing. If I ever was lucky enough to be a father, that was the kind of father I wanted to be. So thank you, Dave.
And really had a great time with David, especially flying. And since then, he gave me the idea to become a pilot, which I did.
Teaching us how to snow machine in deep snow with our ancient Skandics. It was pretty crazy, but Dave was such a great sport. Oh, you're stuck again, he'd say, and just give you that little smirk that he has. Gonna miss him a lot.
I will never forget the kindness and generosity that both he, Aldine, and Peter showed me back then when I was a little bit worse for wear after having a car accident. It wasn't long before they felt like they were a second family to me. So much so that both David and Aldine took the rather long adventure to come and see my wife and I get married in Scotland. He was insistent on wearing a kilt to the wedding, and I must say he put a lot of Scots to shame that day.
Well, the first time I met David Kilbourn was 1971. It was the day after D.B. Cooper hijacked the Northwest Airlines. He was supposed to be coming into town that night. Unfortunately, he arrived 3 days earlier to spend time with my sister, unbeknownst to my parents. And so they had a fun time explaining why he didn't see anything at the airport when he was supposed to come in at that time.
If I could, I'd thank him for all of his support for Nanacocky and also just opening his house for some of us Canadian kids who thought we were cooler than we actually were and needed a safe place to go on weekends once in a while. So he'll be missed.
We stayed one summer, me and my wife. They took us to Paxton at their cabin, and David took us out fishing, showed us how to fillet fish, took us up in the plane. It was just an awesome time. I'll never forget it.
He started Yes Foods, and I went to work for him there, and that's where he taught me accounting.
In between my junior and senior year in college, I worked for David at his Yes Foods. But I want to tell you, it was really one of the first times I really had ever had anybody besides my father hold me accountable for the work I did.
So here we are 30 years later, and I'm still doing accounting. I have to say thank you, Dave, for recognizing my potential and helping me down my career path.
I learned more during that summer interning for David than I learned in a lot of the rest of my life, especially when it came to business. And from that, I'm very thankful.
David was a very successful businessman. There was a time when people said, if you want to know anything about freight to Alaska, talk to David Kilbourn. He valued his family. They were his highest priority. Aldine and Ben and Adam and Peter and their families.
An incredible father, husband, and most importantly, a grandpa. I'm gonna miss him. Yeah. Want to say I love you, Grandpa?
He taught me how to snow machine, how to gut a salmon, and how to lose at Scrabble. I loved seeing the father he was to Ben and Pete and Adam, and the grandfather he was to Zeb and Charlie.
You were awesome. Just flat out amazing as a dad. You always were my hero. I looked at you and I was like, that's how I want to be in life.
He's somebody I always thought would be there, and I guess my regret is that I didn't tell him how much I appreciated what a rock-solid man he was.
Lee and I respected and trusted you in business and as a friend. You lived your life as an example. You, my friend, lived life like a pro.
What's your favorite thing about being up here?
You know what? I can sleep at night. Sleep and comfortable and run up and down the river, look at God's great handiwork. I think life in Alaska has been a great adventure. If you'd have told me 50 years ago that I would have had the life I've had in Alaska with the people I know and my family and that sort of thing, I would have thought that you were nuts and that was going to happen, but I've been a lucky man. Blessed.
This was Adam's work. He did an awesome, awesome job.
So thank you for indulging us on that trip down memory lane. I could sit here and watch this stuff all night. All night. I have an hour-long moose trip if anybody wants to watch. We can play that in a bit. But here's the deal. We're done talking because nobody needs to sit here and cry this much over everything, right? So David would say, go to the bar, get yourself a drink, go get some food, and hang out and tell a story too. If you could tell those stories on that video camera back there, oh, that would be awesome. You just saw it doesn't have to be polished. I'm an amazing editor. I'll make you sound brilliant, okay? So with that being said, we love you, thank you, and enjoy the night.